What you streaming?
Hey y'all.
Hey everybody.
Welcome to the What You Streamin' podcast. I'm Allie.
This is Katie.
And we are your hosts of this fantastic little podcast called What You Streamin'.
On this week's episode, we're discussing the 2020 romantic horror comedy, A Ghost Waits. A Ghost Waits follows a man on his journey as he cleans a haunted house. And in trying to get the ghost to leave, he just happens to fall in love with her. The film is directed by Adam Stovall, and he is also the co-writer of the screenplay with McLeod Andrews and Matt Taylor. And we are lucky enough to have Adam joining us on this week's episode to discuss Ghost Waits. So thanks very much for joining us.
Yay!
Thank you so much for having me. How y'all doing today?
We're doing good, doing good.
Really wonderful. How is your day going?
It's good. I just finished producing a short film down in Virginia for the last 2 weeks. I got back last night, and today I caught up on some emails, and then I took a few naps and did some reading. So it's been a nice day.
Yeah, your schedule has been bananas. It sounds like you've been pretty busy, which is probably a good thing.
It is. It has it's been ridiculous, which is lovely to have so much stuff to get to do. But I do feel bad because you're not the only podcast I've been I really wanted to. I'm sorry, but I literally if I start talking, I don't know what's gonna come out, and it might not be great. I might just start crying. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are the best podcasts, though, man. We're getting real.
Yeah.
Well, we're super excited that you were able to get on the podcast with us today because A Ghost Waits was a film that Katie and I we absolutely loved it. We saw it as part of the Nevermore Film Festival, and it was one that definitely struck a chord with both of us, and is one that I'll be rewatching probably more than once.
Well,
So
thank you.
we really loved it. It was awesome. And I know personally the musical choices kind of made the movie for me. I absolutely the musical choices were fantastic, especially the song that was used in the credits. It's now lives on every playlist that I have. So
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
I really can't wait to kind of get into talk about soundtracks just a little bit more in a few minutes. But before we do that, Adam, could you please introduce yourself and give us a little background information?
Sure. I'm Adam Stovall, and I'm a filmmaker. I get to really say that. It felt so weird because we spent 5 years making this movie, and when you're in the process of making one, you don't really, especially your first one, you don't feel like a filmmaker. You feel like a guy with a really weird project on your laptop. But then we finished it, and it had a really nice run through some festivals and won some awards and got picked up. And so now I have a real movie out in the world where people can see it and spend money to do so. And so it's all right, I guess I can call myself a filmmaker now.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And before that, I didn't go to film school. I was a film journalist for a while. And I would say that was kind of the first phase of my film school. And then I worked in production as a PA and on some stuff, and a second AD on a film. And that was kind of my second phase because especially working on the film, it was a low budget movie. And I had a front row seat because I was not supposed to be the second AD. That was battlefield promotion. It was my first gig on a feature. That should not be second AD. But I got to see where money went, where money had to go versus where money went out of habit, which I think is a hugely educational thing. If you're wanting to make a movie, the best thing you can do is kind of, especially if you're like me and you don't come from money. McLeod and I had this very existential conversation one night of okay, what is a movie? You have people playing a scene and a place where that scene happens and recording elements to document the playing of said scene, and everything else is indulgence, which you can probably tell from A Ghost Waits.
It did have a simplicity to it that we appreciated.
Yeah,
that was exactly our North Star, simplicity. Because we knew we didn't have a lot of money. A lot of no budget films, I feel try to dress it up with bells and whistles to make you forget that they don't have a lot of money, but like they're buying the bells and whistles at a dollar store, so it still sounds cheap. And it's just like, you know what? Just like, let's make it as simple as possible and never hide from the fact that we are making a movie for less than a base level Mercedes costs.
That was a great thing though. Like it was, yeah, I was gonna say the simplicity really worked with the whole theme of the movie, and like doing it black and white as well. Like it all just went together like so well. And if you can make a good film that takes place in like one or two locations and still have a good film, like I think that's always like super impressive, because like you said, you're not using, you know, all the bells and whistles and 20 different locations for shooting and all that to like bring it together. So I feel like if it can stand on just like one or two locations, and you made a hell of a good film.
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to like the courage of one's convictions. But I had this moment like some years back, and this is a writing thing, but I felt like it kind of pertained to the whole thing once it was done. But like years ago, I went and saw a modern romantic comedy that was very good. I saw it at a festival, and the two characters spoke almost exclusively through pop culture. You know, oh, this music, oh, this movie, oh, whatever. And it was really good. You know, I love Kevin Smith movies too. But a couple days later, I saw Marty, which Patty Chayefsky wrote and Ernest Borgnine is in, and he won an Oscar for. It was like 1952. And it's this romantic, I guess you would say drama, about these two middle-aged people who meet at a dance hall. And like, there is no, oh, you like Lawrence Welk? It is just two souls finding each other. And I was so impressed with, I was like, this is timeless, you know? And that kind of gave me like, this is what I want to do. I want to make something as timeless as possible. And so, yeah, you know, and that when we did this, you know, when we started making it, like the directing choices of just like, let's not mess with the camera. Let's just do something very simple and clean.
So like when you were directing the story and writing the story, did your experience as an audiobook director help out with that?
It kind of did. I guess I started directing a few years before we made the movie. And the cool thing about like directing the books is that it's someone else's text. So I'm interpreting that. And as a director in audiobooks, I have like no power when it comes to hiring or anything. Like the producer and the author typically work together to pick the narrator, and then the producer hires me on because I'm up in rotation, and they pick the engineer, and I am just told where to go. But then, you know, I get there and I realize there was this one book I did. The narrator is a legend. She's been around since it was books on tape. And the producer has done so much stuff, and he's been around. And like the engineer, I mean, I am by far the least qualified person in the room. And they're all looking at me like, what do you think? What should we do? Like, why is anyone looking at me? Like, oh, right. My job is literally to make decisions. Like, nobody wants to make decisions. My job is to make decisions. Got it. So now, like, yeah, I mean, I go through the text and I kind of figure out the meaning, you know, what I think it, you know, how it's going to be best suited. But I also don't like to give line readings. So it's very just like, you kind of triangulate where we're going to live. And so in making the movie, I wrote it, and it's a very personal thing, and it just kind of lives in my heart, which made it very easy when I'm making like a lot of decisions in a row. People can just, I always say there's like a prism in my chest, and light hits the prism and I know what color I'm looking for. So, you know, and when you're directing something, you're given like a billion choices a minute. And it's just like, you know, what hits, you know, it's like, I'm looking for green. It hits, it's blue. Nope. It hits, it's green. Yes. Which is such a scientific process. But yeah, it did affect how I direct, in that like I'm able to kind of dissociate sometimes, especially with this short film that I just produced. I had to step in and direct a few times, and I didn't write it. I didn't cast it. I didn't hide, you know, like, I mean, just, but because of that, I was able to kind of dig in, talk to the actors, figure out the emotionality and the point of it. Cause that's kind of my, like, if I know the point of the scene, I know where to put the camera.
I also think that like that having that skill, like you were talking about being able to like read something, compute it, and be like, okay, like this is the end goal. These are the emotions we need to portray to get to that end goal, for people to like understand what the point of, you know, X, Y, and Z is through this scene.
I also don't think I'm a very visual thinker, to be honest. especially with directing, it's so rooted in writing. Of like, okay, I know what the point of this character is. I know what the point of this scene is. You know, this is what we're working towards. So when it's not mine, it's very mathematical in my mind of just like, okay, so this person's doing this, and it becomes kind of polarities, you know, and I'm just basically drafting a wave graph in my head, and then I'm like, you know, then I have to tell a cinematographer what to do, and they're like, what was any of that? And I'm like, give me a second, let me translate it into English for you. Okay.
A Ghost Waits was your debut feature film in like writing, directing, producing, all of it. And like you mentioned, like it's taken some top prizes at Screamfest, Fright Fest, in a variety of categories, including Best Actor, Best Actress, which well-deserved because the leads were absolutely fantastic. And then of course, Best Director, Best Picture, and I think there are probably some other ones in there that I'm missing. And it's been picked up for distribution in both the US and the UK, which is super awesome because we've spoken to a few other kind of indie filmmakers, and that seems to be like the thing that they get caught up on a little bit. Once they've shown at films, it's the distribution that comes next, and that's always a bit of a hurdle, it sounds like. So
yeah, we definitely expected to be self-distributing. I mean, it's such a small movie. It's very personal. It's very idiosyncratic. We're very aware of what we made. I would tell McLeod, like, we made a movie for 9 people. Like, you know, we just got to make sure we find them all. So we were planning to like throw it up on Amazon, you know, and just kind of fight for every inch and every eye that we could get. And then Arrow saw it at Fright Fest and saw the reaction at both Fright Fests that we played and reached out. And yeah, I mean, it's just been, I feel like it's all house money at this point. Like, this could not have gone better for us.
It's so, yeah, that's like, I mean, that's gotta feel just freaking amazing to kind of like, to have your first film go so well and to be picked up. And it sounds like you said, it's something that was kind of like very personal and important to you. So that I feel probably makes it a little even more special.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, I mean, the movie ends how it ends. I had no illusions that we were playing to like all 4 quadrants. I was just like, we're not even playing to 1 quadrant. Like, let's be honest. But we believed in what we were doing. And honestly, this movie exists because of friendship, willpower, and perseverance. You know, McLeod and I had been wanting to make something together for a long time. And this was the one we were able to get going. And everything else that I'd written, I'd take like 3 years to write a script because nobody cares about someone they've never met writing a script in a basement somewhere. And then with this thing, like, we had spent a year trying to make another movie, and that didn't happen. We couldn't raise enough money. So I went back to Northern Kentucky, where I'm from, and it was just like, I don't really know what I'm going to do next. Nothing is working. I was in a very bad place. And some friends had me play a video game, and that gave me it was a first-person haunted house puzzle game, and it's really creepy and everything. But as I'm playing it, I was making my friends laugh because it's me reacting to a haunted house. At some point, I was just like, you know, I've never seen a haunted house movie with someone like me at the center of it. And so between that and a webcomic called Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, where guy asks a girl, what's the most American movie? And she says Ghostbusters, because here's a movie where you have demonstrable proof of an afterlife, but the whole thing is about growing a small business and navigating government bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And I thought that's really funny, but also like, yeah, you're right. Like, ghosts do mean there's an afterlife. I would have so many questions. And so like those two things kind of gave me the idea. And one of the investors that we had met was really excited to make something. And so he was talking to a mutual friend of ours, Nick Thurkettle, and said, hey, like, what's going on with Adam in the movie? And he's like, oh, like, couldn't raise it, but like he had another idea for some like weird haunted house thing. And we got on the phone and I told him what I saw of it. I hadn't written it yet, but I told him when I saw the story, and he's like, yeah, that sounds good. I can kick in X amount of money. And I was like, okay, like, that's interesting. And my mom had said, you know, if you ever have a number, let us know. And if we can help, we will. And I called her and I said, I've got X amount. If you can match it, I can make this. And she and her husband talked to their accountant and then called me back the next day and said, yes, we can do it. We're sending you a check tomorrow. And I was in a bar in downtown Cincinnati, Ohio, with my friend Brian Price, and I just started crying. and then I had to write the script.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, they had to go to work.
Yeah, like, oh shit, I gotta write this thing now. Which to your music thing, like, and this is one reason why I wanted to reach out, is because I feel like we're all kind of kindred souls when it comes to music. I typically title things and name characters very late in the process, but with this, I had to do it immediately because of documents. So I just opened up my Tom Waits discography and named every character after a Tom Waits song, and the movie is literally called A Ghost Waits after Tom Waits.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So the song "The Years Go By" by the Bingsons is the song that plays at the end of the film. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, and the ending of the film itself is like one of the most like morbidly perfect endings to a movie that I have seen in recent history that like I can at least remember. And it was a moment when Katie and I were watching it, and we were like, "Oh wait, he's doing what? Oh my!" And we were like, "Oh, it's so sad, but it's beautiful."
We did a friends and family screening, and my sister's fella, he's got a very boisterous voice. His voice carries, and it gets to that point, and it's like cars pulling in, and you just hear, "Oh shit!" It's just like in the back cackling, like, yes.
That's pretty much what our reaction was. And then that song comes on, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm broken."
Yep.
I saw the Bingsons, so that's from a show called 100 Days, which if you ever get a chance to see, do it. It is amazing. They were workshopping it at the No Theater in Cincinnati. That's where I saw it. And it just lived in my head. I always say my brain is a hard drive of every movie I've ever seen and every song I've ever heard just on shuffle. So it's just in my head. And I was out with my then girlfriend, and we were talking about something. And then I just saw the ending with that song playing. And I was like, oh, like, that's going to mess some people up. Like, yeah, that works. I always say, like, I just want to ruin someone's day if I can.
Well, and we had, like, throughout the thing, because, I mean, when we watched this, it was, we were, like, several days into the festival, and I'm not sure if you had listened to the Nevermore episode that we did, but we discussed how we had to, like, plan it out, and so how much content we were actually consuming at a time. And so it gets down to kind of one of the last days we could do stuff. And I'm like, okay, we're watching this one. Because I was like, I really want to watch this one. And we put it on. And then throughout, it was just really like, oh, look at that. Oh, and then like a song would come on, be like, that's a good tune there, you know? So it was just really cool how there were just these little touches to it that you'd be watching it. And even after a full week of just so much like content exposure, it was still just really nice to have just kind of like those small little moments like, oh, that's nice. Because, you know, we had been watching, you know, horror films and stuff all week.
Yeah, it gets a little intense.
I was like, oh, that's nice. Oh, look at that. That's a good song for that. And then, you know, at some point you get real sad because you realize this poor fella is like so lonely.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you're like, oh, I'm real sad. But that's a nice song for that too. And so yeah, you had us all over the place, and that ending totally. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was. I was like on my phone as the song was playing, like trying to Google lyrics to find out who sang it, and then watched the credits, and I'm like, okay, that's got to be the one. Like, it's just like I listen to it not daily, but I listen to it pretty frequently. And
it was daily there for a hot minute.
It was daily there for. I'm sorry, Katie.
I
apologize. But
I was playing that for people like before the movie was done. I would just like if I was out with like a friend or my mom or something, just like, hey, want to hear the song that ends the movie? Just put it on. And you're like, oh my god, like that is haunting. I really appreciate you guys saying that because I like soundtracks they mean a lot to me. They're one of my favorite parts of film. When a movie can use music perfectly, it is just the best thing ever. And I'm like anybody else. I wanted to make movies since I was like 8 years old. And when you want to be a filmmaker, you spend a lot of time thinking about what kind of film you want to make. Oh, what would my movie do? What would, what would it feel like? And so I always knew that the soundtrack had to figure in heavily.
Yeah, no, it was so, and even the trailer, like I was rewatching various trailers today to refresh my memory, and I was like, oh, even the music in the trailers is perfect. Because I don't know the name of the song that is in the trailer, but it ends with years go by, but like the transition and where, yeah, it was just like, oh, such good music. Like, so well done. Like it was fantastic. And then, so I had a question about when it went into the other song selections, including Yellow Cotton Dress by Wussy, Punk Kid by Honey Honey, and Alberta by the CD Seeds. Were those all kind of musicians and, music that you knew prior to filming, or were those kind of bands that you found and kind of fell in love with the song and just thought, that's perfect. Like, I need that in my film?
They were all friends. They were all, I spent my 20s going to a lot of live music and some in my 30s as well, actually. But I just got to know a lot of musicians, and, they knew that they've known forever that I wanted to make a movie. And, so it's when this became a viable project, I could just reach out. So like Honey Honey have been friends since I moved to LA in 2008. And they've had the extreme good fortune to have a label for all of their albums. The only song of theirs not owned by a label is Punk Kid. And so I called Ben and was like, hey, can I have Punk Kid? Because I can't afford label prices, but I can afford friend prices.
Yeah.
And then actually Yellow Cotton Dress by Wussy was not originally the song that we were using. Originally, he didn't sing the song. In the movie, he was just kind of making up little songs as he worked around the house. And that's what she was keying into. But then it wasn't playing. Like, people would watch it and it just never quite clocked for them that this is what was happening. And so we're like, all right, we're going to have to be like not subtle at all. He's just going to have to play a song. And the one that we were going to use, we had never actually gotten permission. The friend was like, yeah, but like I was like, I need like official stuff from you. And I just never got it. So I called Mark Messerly, who in Wussy, because I've known Wussy since before they were a band. I used to do a comedy show, and we would have a band open the show, and then we would perform. And I gave them one of their first gigs.
Oh, nice.
So I called Mark. I was like, hey, can I have Yellow Cotton Dress? And he said, let me check with Chuck and Lisa, but I'm pretty sure yes. And then like 15 minutes later, we had Yellow Cotton Dress, and we went to a pawn shop to buy McLeod a guitar so he could learn to play it. But yeah, like it's all friends. CD Seeds, Margaret Darling also did half the score, So if you're wanting to make a movie and you want it to have a really good soundtrack, be aware of your budget.
Yeah.
Ask
be
your
a
friends.
lover of live music, though.
Yeah,
Go out, see some
musicians.
tunes. Yeah.
So kind of going off of that, when it comes to like soundtracks, well, you kind of already said, I was gonna say, what advice or tips would you have for folks when it comes to movie making and picking out music?
I will add something to what I said, though, which is, and like one of the best things I learned through this process is that the movie is the boss. You are not the boss of the movie. So like the movie wants the best idea, and you sometimes have to kind of get out of your own way and say, okay, I like, because we have some scenes that we ended up not putting on in the film, because I quickly learned that like anytime we left the house, the spell was broken. And with music, I would say like it's not enough to just love a song. It has you have to prioritize the emotionality of the scene. And so yeah, I would just tell people like, hopefully some musicians, but think about the emotion that you're trying to serve. Because it's not enough. I've heard so many soundtracks where it's very clear that they loved a band and that band said, yes, you can use it. And there's just like a ton of songs and none of them are remarkable. I don't remember any of them the next day. So you've got to listen to the movie. It will tell you what it needs.
We were discussing if we could think of, just off the top of our head, like other soundtracks that if they weren't the same, like would those feelings still be there? And we came up with some pretty funny ones. Do you have one of those that you could think of for yourself?
Oh, a soundtrack that I think really fits the emotion.
Oh, or that just kind of like made the movie what it is. Like without that particular soundtrack, it would not necessarily be.
Well, I mean, Purple Rain is a
Oh,
movie
yeah.
that does not work without that soundtrack. Like, I finally watched that movie a few years ago, and my jaw was just on the floor. It's like, this is not a movie, but the music's so good, and Prince is just transfixing, and you're like,
Yeah.
this totally works just because of charisma. I think the Rushmore soundtrack is probably that. I wouldn't say it doesn't work without it, because that script is tight, but
Yeah.
that's my favorite of his soundtracks. Royal Tenenbaums is good, but I feel like it gets a little like some of the stuff he's using. It's kind of the scene running the music running the scene instead of the scene running the music. Whereas Rushmore, I think, is just perfect choices all the way through.
If you're like me and you're just getting started with podcasting, it can be scary and overwhelming. That's why Anchor is such a great choice. It's one of the easiest ways to make a podcast, and best of all, it's free. It also has great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Another great feature of Anchor is that they'll distribute your podcast for you. Your listeners will be able to access your podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. You can also make money from your podcast using Anchor, and that's with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place, and it's easy to use. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
We could talk about music forever, but
Oh yeah.
I did want to bring it back to the ending of the film because, like we said, I don't want to give it away, but it is kind of it's a weird mix of like being very morbid and very sweet at the same time, or like lovely and romantic, but like in a morbid way. Did you, I think you kind of mentioned it earlier, but was that always kind of the ending that you saw while you were writing it? And did you have any doubts about like having that ending?
Very early on, I had another ending, because generally the idea with ghosts is that they're here because of unfinished business. So initially, the ending was going to be that Jack helps Muriel resolve her unfinished business, because that's what Jack does. He helps people. And then Muriel is able to move on finally, because that's what people do. They leave Jack. And I told a friend that.
Too.
Yeah, I told a friend that, and he was just like, no.
Poor Jack.
No one would have been happy for Muriel, like at all. No one.
No.
Could have been.
So it very quickly became like, okay, that's not going to work. And so, yeah, I did some work on getting to this ending. And no, I never had any doubt about it. Like, it was so clear in my head, and it worked. You know, I was like, okay, I know how to shoot this, but like, it's the thing, like, if I can do this, we have something special.
Yeah. And
it didn't require anything too complicated. But it's also, I'm a fan of context. I think, you know, it's something that we've gotten away from, you know, in very how dialogue has kind of changed in society, where now it's very quick and there's less room for nuance. The nice thing about making a movie is it's like, if you give me 80 minutes of your time, I'm going to talk to you about something, and I promise it's worth it. You know, I struggle with mental health. I have struggled with depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation pretty much my entire life. And you can never talk about it. People never let you talk about that. The second you start to talk about, especially suicidal ideation, they're just like, no, that should never happen. And you're like, yeah, but that's not helpful. Because we weren't dealing with a huge budget, I felt like I could say something about this. Because also, like, the way depression is usually shown in a film, it's the more overtly dramatic stuff, like manic depression, bipolar disorder. Whereas to me, depression is wallpaper. That is uniquely skilled at convincing you that you're not worthy of walls. And yeah, I just never seen it. And I thought, well, you know, I might never get to make another one of these things. So I want to say something that 20 years from now, if this is the only thing I've ever done, I'm still going to be proud of it. And I just said, like, let's lean into the fact that, like, we really don't have a whole lot of money we have to make back. Like, it's a very low bar to cross, and we have time. So, you know, if it takes us 20 years, then it takes us 20 years. Doesn't seem like it's gonna. And everybody just bought in. I mean, you know, I've had a few people tell me, like, I never thought I would like an ending like that, but I like this one. And it's just like, well, yeah, because, you know, I wanted something that would be transcendent. I didn't want to make something small. You know, I didn't want to focus on like, oh, I'm sad, I'm alone, and like, why won't anybody love me? I'm not an incel. I don't, I have no entitlement when it comes to other people. So I was like, no, let's talk about two souls connecting. Let's go back to Marty. And I knew I didn't want her to like come back to life. We're just getting into the ending. It's fine. Spoilers, I guess.
Spoiler alert, it's all good.
Like, I knew that she couldn't come back to life. That would be such a cop-out. And this felt right. Because in the context of the story, he's just moving to Denver for a girl.
Well, and I think the way that you did it, where we start off with him just kind of being this like beep, boop, beep, just kind of a happy-go-lucky, kind of a derpy kind of guy. He's just like, you know, all right. And then he realizes that he is very sad. And, you know, like that, I think a lot of people might connect with that because you may not realize that you're sad.
Yeah.
Because it, like you said, it looks like wallpaper. You know, who knows? Like, who knows what you're doing over there? And then when you finally realize that you are that sad, like, what are you going to do about it? And he made a choice. He made a choice based on what his, you know, experience was.
It was really exciting to write. Because again, like, I may never make another one of these. Let's say something. And so getting to write that voicemail at the end and getting to say, like, nothing makes sense to me. You know, that is how it feels to me. It's just like, I don't know why people make the choices that they do, you know? And one thing that was fascinating to me about last year with the COVID of it all, the quarantine of it all, is you saw what happened when people were removed from the ability to distract themselves and to just get caught up in momentum. People had to sit with themselves and they freaked the F out. They rejected it entirely. It's fascinating to me.
The thing with that too is people who deal with that on the daily, like people who, you know, like I suffer with mental health as well, with anxiety and depression and whatnot. And, you know, most of us do okay. We were like, yeah, this is normal for us. This is how we feel on the daily. It's like that anxiety you're feeling right now is what I feel every day, all day. Like I remember my therapist asking me like, how are you feeling about COVID? And I'm like, I'm fine. I mean, like, if I get it and I go. I mean, that's how the world works.
How dare you be so real about it? Get out of here with your realistic expectations.
But what I really appreciated about the way that Jack was written was it's you appear normal, right? No one knows what's going on the inside. And even even you don't know what's going on necessarily. And kind of like Katie said, like he had that realization that he was sad, but for me, it was more of the realization that he was like completely and utterly alone. Like he had all these people in his life, but none of those people were actually like his people. And it's that realization that kind of like, you know, furthers the story and the development between Muriel and him and where it ends. And so I really appreciated kind of like that, like you were saying, it wasn't like an over dramatization of someone who's depressed. It's what depression looks like 99% of the time. Like you can't tell. Like, and so I did really appreciate that and kind of like because like you said, we've all had those moments where we're like, I'm completely and utterly alone.
Thank you. When I like at my lowest, movies have always been there for me. And I wanted to make something that could be a part of that legacy. And so like, even though we have won awards and we have been acquired and like things have gone very well for us, like the best thing that's happened is people coming up afterwards or people messaging us and thanking us and sharing their own struggle. And, you know, and especially people, you know, my fellow, you know, sufferers of suicidal ideation, you know, there have been like a few people that have like, oh, I worry about this, like this might give people ideas and like, oh my gosh. And I don't really feel like I can jump into the conversation. Like I have said my piece, but this woman jumped in and said, I struggle with this. And no movie is going to make me kill myself.
Yeah.
But this movie made me feel seen and heard. And maybe if you didn't shut down the conversation, maybe if you engaged, we wouldn't need a movie to do this. We would have, you know, it's like, it's a gift when somebody trusts you enough to talk to you about it. And it was really beautiful to see people kind of saying like, no, this is important, and it made me feel a certain way. That's the best thing in the world.
I think one of the things that Katie and I have kind of learned through this whole experience is the filmmaking process itself is like one hurdle, and then the festivals, and then, you know, the marketing and the distribution and everything. But it's been really kind of great getting to meet and speak with a whole bunch of different directors from these films, and like I really enjoy being able to kind of like get you guys, you know, help however I can and however we can with the podcast and social media and everything. Like, it's because we love movies, like, you know, and so this is kind of like our small way of like showing our
We love them,
appreciation.
and we're not making them, so we need you guys to keep making them.
Yeah,
like, get them out there.
Doing my best. No, I'm a kid from Florence, Kentucky. I didn't grow up with access. I didn't grow up, like, my parents weren't part of anything, you know, and for the longest time, like, I didn't feel like I could. You know, every interview with a filmmaker or actor, actress, director, whatever, they're like, if you can be happy doing anything else, do that. And I spent my 20s doing anything else, working in politics. I was in the Army. I ran bars and restaurants. Like, it was crazy. And I realized recently that, because I'm the happiest and the healthiest I've ever been. And so much of that is I was in such a bad place when I made this, because I basically decided, like, I was 30 something years old and I could not get hired anywhere, and I hadn't had a relationship in a very long time, and I was just like, you know what, I don't think I'm supposed to be a person. Like, I think I'm just like wasting space, and I should take myself off of here so that someone else can have this space. But I always knew I wanted to make a movie, so it was like, okay, before you kill yourself, make a movie. And there can't be any excuses. You know, you're not going to have money, so write something small. You know, you've got really wonderful friends who will support you and help you. But then, like, because it's cheap doesn't mean it gets to be bad, which is why we worked on it for 5 years and did 2 sets of pickups. And it's like, oh, how long did it take to shoot? And it's like 20 days over the course of 3 years, because we just kept tinkering with it. And at some point I realized that my feeling of not being worthy of space in this world, all these insecurities and everything, were starting to fade, because I was starting to trust my instincts. Because the movie gave me a way to kind of to start trusting myself. And there was a point, I was on a train going up to New Haven, Connecticut for a project, and I just realized that, like, I was fully sitting in my seat. I wasn't like thinking about the other people around me and like, oh my God, am I like inconveniencing them by my mere presence or anything like that? That for the first time I felt allowed to just be fully in the space where I was. And once I realized that, it's just like, oh, this is what it is to be a person. And now it's my duty to talk about this and to make more stories about this, because I know how many people there are out there like me that do struggle with that stuff. And a movie can be a hug.
Adam, thank you. Like, again, it's been so amazing having you on the podcast, and we really appreciate you being able to come on and
absolutely
talk about A Ghost Waits. And before we kind of wrap up, is there anything that you're currently working on, or any projects that you'd like to share?
Oh God, so much.
Wonderful things.
That's good.
Yeah, like, we are shopping a script that I wrote. An actual producer who has made movies you've heard of saw A Ghost Waits and was like, hey, what else you got? And then I am also writing, I am finishing up a draft of a time travel road movie that I'm really excited about. It is by far the hardest I've ever worked on a script, but I think it's going to be really good.
Sounds exciting. Yeah.
And then I'm producing another short film, and, you know, just all kinds of crap.
Busy, you know.
Doing all the things.
Like, you've been super busy, so I'm not sure if you've been able to consume any like TV or movies lately, but what have you been watching lately? What have you been streaming?
Yeah, streaming over there.
What you streaming?
I just watched Mayor of Easttown, which was very good. It's a show on HBO. What else have I watched lately?
Well, and it can be something that you listened to.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to
music.
be necessarily, because, you know, for us, streaming means, you know, concerts,
right,
everything else. So
I watch a lot of YouTube. I tend to find like short, not even really short. Some of them are like 45 minutes, but there's some really great film essays. People on YouTube, Patrick Willems, Dan Olson, who does Folding Ideas, Renegade Cut, Lindsay Else. My favorite, or a favorite really, and a really cool element of this Ghost Wait stuff is there's a YouTube channel called Be Kind Rewind that is about it's mostly, she does essays about best actress winners, and she talks about the actress who won and the context of their career, but also then the category and everybody else that was in it and like kind of what it meant. She has such a gift for context, and I got to meet her back in 2019. And so when Arrow commissioned the Blu-ray, they wanted to have a video essay, and I got to get her to make an essay about a Ghost Waits and its place in the like ghostly romance subgenre. So I would highly recommend Be Kind Rewind.
Be Kind Rewind. All right.
We'll check her out. Yeah.
That sounds interesting. I've never thought about watching like film essays, but I bet I'd really like that.
And then do you guys like British panel shows? Because I watch a lot of British panel shows.
We will watch pretty much anything. We'll give something a chance a couple episodes.
My absolute favorite is there's one thing that's like annual. They do the Big Fat Quiz of the Year, and I love those. But then there's one called 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown that like I have met one other American who has heard of it. Not even like, oh yeah, I like that. Just has heard of it. It makes me so happy. It is so dumb. And it's Countdown, which is their like kind of Jeopardy. Like there's math and there's words and like it's wonderful, but it's comedians playing Countdown. It's so dumb. It's wonderful. Gosh. It makes my heart happy.
That sounds delicious. That sounds like classic like.
Well,
British
we are glad
comedy,
that you shared it with us.
Yes, my pleasure.
Oh my gosh. Where can people find A Ghost Waits or stream it?
So it is available for rent on Amazon, Google Play, and iTunes. You can also stream it on Arrow Player, arrow-player.com. Arrow has their own streaming channel with some real goodies on there. You can buy it if you're into the whole physical media thing. Yeah. And we have a website, ghostwaits.com. So we're all like any like news that happens, we always post it there. And then of course there's Twitter, Ghost Waits, or at Adam Stovall if you just want to follow me. And get more music recommendations.
Yes.
Don't tempt us, Adam.
You put that on Twitter and you'll get recommendations forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again so much. This has been an absolute pleasure getting to kind of pick your mind and hear a little bit of the story behind A Ghost Waits. And yeah, I can't say it enough. We really appreciate you joining us today.
It has been my absolute privilege and pleasure. Thank you very much.
Also, if you are enjoying the podcast, hop on over to Apple, iTunes, and leave us a review. Maybe smash that star button. Give us 5 stars only, No. Leave us a review, like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, all of that fun social media stuff. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you are watching something good this week. Get out there and get to streaming, folks. Bye.